All right, I'm excited. 1985, Shawn Day from Jefferson, my former teammate here, sophomore year. Shawn, talk about when you walk into this gym. What kind of memories come back to you?
Well,
it looks different, obviously,
yeah.
but you go.
Well, it's obviously fond memories being in here, and Jefferson always had the gym that was, to me, looking back in the day, is kind of the coolest wraparound. You'd walk into Jefferson, you could walk around. I don't remember ever seeing a gym like that. And of course, when I was growing up, there was good basketball teams at Jefferson. I mean, with the 76 team and then going forward. And so obviously back in the day, there was 3 high schools, Jefferson, Kennedy, and Lincoln, and I was right on the boundary of going to Jefferson or Lincoln. As a matter of fact, the street right outside my house was the dividing line, and I was on the fence of where I was going to go. But we all decided as a group, a bunch of us, to go to Lincoln. But we knew Jefferson was always going to be good in sports. But we thought we were going to maybe
turn that around.
Yeah. But we had some pretty good athletes back then. But yeah, I mean, coming in here, and of course I lost touch of Jefferson basketball for a while, but then been coming to games again since, I don't know, probably the early 2000s or a little bit after that. But it's got good memories of a lot of things in this gym, that's for sure. And
you played in it for 4 years.
4 years, yeah, and played at Lincoln my freshman year. Played varsity as a freshman, and then came over here when Lincoln closed. And Jefferson, obviously there was quite a transition. I don't know exactly how many students were at Jefferson that would have been the class of, your brother graduated, John, in '82, so wasn't that Tim's senior year, right? It was
83.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that class of graduating class was, but it had to be, 700, 800 people?
Oh, I think it might have been bigger than 800, 900 people. Because most of the guys, my memory of that is, most of them from Lincoln wanted to come to Jefferson, especially the athletes, because state championship basketball team, just the sports were better all around.
Well, that's what I remember when Jefferson won in '82. There was a party kind of over by Jasper's house, and your brother showed up.
John or Tim?
Yeah, John did.
Oh,
and
what a party animal that guy was.
He was.
Unbelievable.
But I just looked at him, and I mean, he had I don't know what he scored, like 26 points or something. He had a good game, though.
Yeah.
And looking at him in awe, and I'm like, I wouldn't mind going to Jefferson.
I want to do what he's doing. Yeah. Exactly. So this gym, I mean, obviously they put the new bleachers in, and I mean, the floor is new. It looks fabulous. Any particular games that kind of stick out in your mind? Obviously the Edina game, your sophomore year with Tim and my brother Tim and Steve Hill and Ray Branch. I mean, that was packed.
Well, and Jimmy and I were just talking. I mean, unless we went head-to-head against hockey, hockey was king at Jefferson there, it seemed like, for a while. But basketball is kind of starting to take over a little bit. But I mean, these games we could expect it to be almost packed, but yeah, I mean, certainly the rivalry games, the Kennedy, because we all had friends at Kennedy, and then the Edina game, of course, sticks out in my mind because as far as we were concerned, we had won.
Right.
And then the miracle shot, and it was a miracle shot, and then. Just some of definitely the Kennedy game. So I'm trying to think. Well,
we had a number of Kennedy games.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys played them all the time.
Burnsville, we had a decent rivalry, and of course, going around, and still to this day, I mean, I go to the state basketball tournament and I see these guys. The old Lake South Conference, which is what's the conference Jefferson's in now?
West Metro.
West Metro. But the Lake South was the premier conference back in the day.
No
I mean, and they've probably changed the name of it 2 or 3 times, and I get confused, but I do get a little disappointed that, and I know with enrollment and everything else, but, a lot of these rivalry games, they don't play them anymore. I don't even know if Jefferson plays E9 anymore, do they?
Ask Jimmy.
We do.
You do? You still do?
But this is it's considered a non-conference. They just got to schedule it.
Yeah.
We try to play all the teams in our section if we can.
Yeah, I mean, but we'll walk around and I see all these guys from the Lake South, I mean, to this day, that's one thing about basketball is you might not have talked to these guys when you were on the court or just a little bit, but, and Summer League was just starting at Normandale, traveling. I think I was on one of the first, true, traveling teams that, went and played in national tournaments.
Jerry Gamble's.
Yeah, Jerry Gamble's Boys Club in North Minneapolis. And, now, I mean, these kids eat, sleep, and do everything basketball. So, of course, you're going to get to know these kids. But that's one thing nice about basketball, too, is, I might run into Tim Hansen from Prior Lake, or, I mean, it seems like everywhere I go, especially because my son went to Jefferson. I go to sporting events at different places and oh, hey, what's up, man? And, of course, a lot of people have stayed in the Twin Cities or in their backyard.
Right. All right, let's go. I'm going to throw some things at you, some of these kind of themes, and you talk about it. Let's just start with obviously through 50 years, you're not going to have winning teams, great teams all the time through a stretch of time like that, but just talk about back in the day, just the success of the Jefferson basketball program. How did you see it?
Well, in our day, I mean, when I was growing up, going through the ranks, that core Jefferson graduating class of 85, those guys all, they were doing traveling and they were dominating tournaments. And I wasn't even on the team. I was playing on that Gamble's team. And I knew that the teams before, were good. And that obviously there's, in 84 with Chris West and John Williams and, Mike Hansen and all
Mark
those guys.
Nehrude.
Yeah, Nehrude. I mean, they're good teams. And, as far as I was concerned, Jefferson was probably the premier basketball program in the state. I mean, in the 80s, if they lost just a few games, it'd be surprising,
Right.
And that's like that year when Lincoln closed. I mean, just like that Jefferson football came out of were supposed to be ranked number one. They were ranked consensus number one, but, football's different than basketball, and there's a lot of, it was, I'm not going to say it was consensus, but everybody thought Jefferson was going to be pretty good. And then, I kind of felt bad for your dad and Jack. I mean, they had to cut some players that, that were going to play varsity at Lincoln or whatever. And I mean, so they kind of had that extra pressure to, what do you do? Of course, you keep me.
Right. Exactly. So, but I think that's true. I mean, there's a stretch of years where, you can go back and look it up. I mean, Jefferson teams were winning more than any other program in the state. I mean, Minneapolis North, I don't care who you're talking to. I mean, that's how the success was big.
Yeah, and I don't, Jefferson's and Bloomington's enrollment wasn't even that high, and obviously it does go to coaching, and it goes also to, I think Jefferson had a pretty good feeder program though, and of course we didn't have, I've been a Bloomington resident when they were going to build these field houses. I was like, I don't know about that, but then when I got involved with youth basketball, it's like, man, that's beautiful, because we didn't have that.
Right.
I mean, we could only practice in, I don't know if we even practice anywhere else. Maybe over at Olson, but when you were growing up, did you even remember with Jefferson basketball? Did you practice anywhere besides here?
No,
or like in
no. I mean, I would sneak into Normandale.
Yeah, we'd all
go down there.
I felt like I had a
But
key.
that's interesting, because it's probably amazing in some ways that Jefferson had so much success in boys basketball, and we could barely get into our own gym. I mean, I would sneak in here, and I would hear the custodian's key, and they'd open up the doors, and I'd sneak in, and I'd have the one light on under the main basket if they were down, and I'd be shooting, and then I'd hear the janitor coming, and I'd hold the ball, and I'd go sneak up against the bleachers. So he wouldn't see me, then he'd leave the gym, and I'd keep shooting.
I was always under the impression that the Lynches had a key here.
No, see, that's how stingy they were. We hardly got into this gym.
Well, that's like my nephews, when we were talking, they go to Rosemount, they get the key to the weight room at Rosemount, but
24 hours a day they can go in there.
Jimmy and I were, Normandale was a place, though, that I'd ride my bike, I'd walk down there, I'd ride my moped, I'd get dropped off.
Camps.
We'd be at Normandale all the time, and that's why I am disappointed that Normandale doesn't have a basketball program anymore, or a gym to play at, but at least these kids have, but we didn't have to pay to, you got to pay to do the Jefferson Activity Center, which is not very much, but.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Jefferson, when I graduated from Jefferson, I was like, yeah, I mean, a consensus there. Of course, you guys won state in the following 2 years after we graduated, and we took third and probably could have done better. But, when I left, I was like, yeah, they're going to, and especially I knew when you were on the team, that you guys were going to do good things, and obviously you did.
All right, let's talk about kind of for a long time, and even up to this point with Jeff and Jimmy coaching this program, just talk about the hard work that we had to put in, and the coaches demanded hard work from us in practice.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I was a post player, so your dad, for me, I think your dad worked with me more. Didn't he do more post work or not?
Yeah. No, he did.
And I'm sure your dad was a post player, but yeah, I mean, there was a lot expected from you at Jefferson, and not only in the basketball court, but in the classroom. I mean, now you hear, oh, they monitor you and do this, but they definitely kept tabs on, your attendance and, making sure you're at practice and working hard. And
so there was definitely an expectation to work hard. If you're on this team, you're going to bust your butt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I went to the Minnesota Vikings practice yesterday and watched them down at the new place. And I said to my son, I'm like, I said, this is easier than the high school practice. They weren't even running them. I mean, Jack ran us. I mean, we'd have to practice we'd run 10, 12 killers, or is that what it was called? Or?
The 17s, yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about it that we were conditioned. Looking back, I never even wanted to come out of the game. Who does?
Right.
But now if I played pickup, I'd want to come out after about
exactly.
after a minute.
Yeah.
So,
hey, let me give you a stat. I never knew this stat until I think my dad told me at some point. This is years ago, but this is after I was done with high school. He said that all those state tournament teams from the start of the school in 1970, their first time was 75 when they got to the state tournament, through all those state championships and state tournament appearances, through I think it was over 20 years, so past 1990 state tournament team. Jeff, you talk about getting in good shape and demanding that you get, working hard and all that kind of stuff. Jefferson never lost a third game of a 3-day state tournament in over 20 years.
really?
So the 75 team got to the consolation. That was a team that could have won a state championship.
Yeah.
They won the consolation, 76 state champs. And then our years, 85, 86, 87, those years, we all won that third day. And then 82 state championship too. So all the way through the 90 team that consolation champs. So, I mean, think.
They took the consolation round out.
Say that again?
Then they took the consolation round out in the 2000s.
Yeah, but I guess that's my point of what you're talking about, Shawn, is just like being in great shape and running us. End of the season after we'd gone for 4 or 5 months and the hard work and that type of stuff.
Well, and I think that both your dad and Jack, they're definitely old school. I mean, they're all about, conditioning and, making sure that you were in shape, and both physically and mentally, I mean, and I can tell you one thing, I mean, I enjoyed kind of watching, we'd get in and we'd watch our basketball game, the previous game, or maybe scout some opponents a little bit. Now I assume that you guys do it on a grand scale now. Of course, Jack would turn down the volume because he didn't want to hear my buddies announce.
Student announcers.
Yeah, but, I mean, definitely had a game plan, and, but by the time I got to Jefferson, I mean, your dad and Jack had been around for, what year did they start coaching here? When it
Well,
opened?
Jack started the program in 1970, and my dad joined in 1977.
So, I mean, they knew every offense. I mean, you know, it seems to me there's more of a lot more coaches are moving around than they used to, you know?
Yeah.
The varsity coaches. So obviously they bring in a new system, but, you know, I mean, you know, when you look at, you know, we used to scrimmage Mounds View, you know, I mean, some of these preseason scrimmages, and of course we go to Duluth and do that deal, and you know, I mean, they were buddies with those coaches, and of course coaches are buddies with coaches now, but
Right.
it's definitely different.